Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, we've already seen the Warzone meta evolve a little bit throughout its launch so far, and within the time that we've seen meta updates and certain weapon changes, we really haven't gone through and broken down the true top 10 best loadouts, primary, secondary, perks, equipment, the whole nine. So that's exactly what we're doing here today. As we get into the setups, if you enjoy the video or if you simply find it helpful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It does really help grow the channel, and as always, much love to everyone who takes the time to do so. And of course, if you're new here, you want to guarantee you're up to date every single day with news, updates, meta breakdowns. It's all right here, so feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So initially, real quick, perks and equipment is going to be the same on all the loadouts here today. It's obviously super convenient that we have default overkill, so we don't have to waste a perk or anything on that, and you can pick and choose a lot of what you want here just outright. That'll apply to all your setups, and that's exactly what I do. So initially for me, tacticals, smokes are the way to go. They're just the answer to everything. If you need cover, smokes. Need a quick res, smokes. If you need to rotate from A to B, smokes. They're just so good, right? And then depending on the mode you're playing, whether it's resurgence or standard BR, knives and semtexes really are my go-to. Frags aren't bad, but obviously, you know, the upsides of semtexes, you can stick a player, you can force players to move without it getting thrown back. Those are obviously really good for an actual lethal explosive. And the knives for the insta finishes obviously is super clutch as well. So one of those two I'm always running, just depends on the mode. And then for perks here, pretty standard for me. Nothing really has changed since launch. Double time and sleight of hand. Keep in mind, sleight of hand works different for every gun in the game, but it's still beneficial to have that fast reload in my opinion. Tempered, because I always go for a medic vesting game. If I can find one of those, that's the most ideal. And then bird's eye, obviously giving me more information on the UAV with their actual heading and where the enemies are looking. You know, it's basically like a mini advanced UAV in some cases, so super powerful there. Like I said, that's the same on every single class setup here today. Now we can focus on the primaries and secondaries for all 10 classes. So obviously this one is a pretty obvious one. The Bas-B is still a great choice even after nerf for long range and for like sort of mid-range, close range sniper support, which, spoiler alert, coming up there. I paired this with the base striker, just a really solid, really consistent SMG, easy to use and very forgiving as well. So for the Bas-B here, initially I'm going for the 2.5 times eagle eye optic. I'm going to be using this on a lot of my mid to long range guns. It's a low visual recoil scope, good zoom for really any distance there, but of course optics are always preference. So if there's a scope you like more, whether it's a slate or a reflector or anything else, always go for the one that you're the most comfortable with here. I've got the 45 round Excinemag, your basic Excinemag max there. Bruen heavy support is one that I kind of spam as an underbarrel on a lot of guns just because it's incredibly good. Great horizontal recoil control, decent gun kick control. Sometimes it gives you a tiny bit of vertical, but this helps out with horizontal the most, which is obviously clutch, makes every single weapon way more predictable. I've got the Venom long barrel. It's better control, better range, better velocity, better pizza Papa John's, and of course Tempest GH50. I'd love to use a suppressor here, but this is a much higher recoil weapon compared to a lot of the other ones here, so I'm going all in on control. And quite frankly, you could use any of these four base compensators: Tempest, TIE, LR8, Lockshot, or Leveler. Just depends on how you want the gun to feel. Bore is not bad either. You know, if you want to focus all in on horizontal, TIE is really good. If you want more of a balance, Lockshot or Tempest is pretty solid. So just depends on what you're looking for out of the gun. Either way, the Bas-B still hits like a truck. This thing is still very, very good. And then for the striker, we're just focused on that close range efficiency. So because it is so easy to use, I use the Shadow Strike suppressor. This is just simply keeping me off the radar. No other pros or cons there. The MSP98 hand stop is not one I use often because this does hurt your horizontal control, but the striker is just so easy that in the close ranges, that's not a huge deal. And we're getting really good movement back out of that alongside some decent vertical control. 48 round Excinemag, 60 is just a little bit too slow in terms of ADS, reload and whatnot. So 48 is totally sufficient. 7 milliwatt laser for the faster ADS and sprint to fire. Then I go for the light stock, which is just better mobility at its core. So nice, snappy, nice and aggressive. It just feels like a really solid SMG that you can run and gun with. Next up is my sniper loadout, and as I said, the Bas-B is still doing really well as sniper support, close to mid-range style gameplay. So I've got it here as my alternative, and it probably should be nerfed a little bit more. Like, it being used with this you know, level of versatility is probably a little bit busted. Obviously I'm going for the KATT because this is the one true one-shot snipe. Please don't test this in the firing range and say, wait a minute, I'm not getting my one shots. The firing range is not accurate. This is our one shot sniper. You don't need explosive ammo. For this, I go for the Nightfall suppressor. Gives me the best velocity here. I've got the Zang barrel, again, giving me better velocity as well. The Spire point rounds, 34% increase of velocity. So you're getting a max velocity build here with great, you know, sort of reg and bullet drop over range. It almost feels like it's hit scan in a sense and can one shot to the head, which is obviously super clutch. I go for the default scope, and instead I go for the rubberized pad stock for general base movement speed. That's just because if I'm running around with this out, I love not to feel like I'm standing in concrete boots. But if you're okay with that slightly slower mobility, using the tack pad for better ADS is also a really good choice too. Then lastly, just behind the face cam, I go for the quick bolt, obviously just faster rechambering speed there. I'll go ahead and hide the face cam if you're looking for a screenshot. This is just like the best and most simple form to use the KATT to make sure it's the most consistent over any range basically. Then the Bas-B close range, I'm going for the crippling malice light barrel. This is a built-in suppressor barrel, gives me better mobility, hurts your range and your velocity, but this thing's TTK still exceeds all these other guns in close range, so that's not a huge deal. I've got the angled underbarrel, which is great, helps out with horizontal control, gives you a little bit of vertical, but it's not a huge deal where the fights are taking place that you're using this in. You know, the close to mid-range 30 meters and closer, not a huge deal there. 45 round extended mag still. I go for the MK3 reflector elo sight here, great close to mid-range sight, and then I go for the V8 light stock, which is just better mobility all around, hurts your control only a little bit for some decent mobility increases there. So as a sniper support, this is a ton of fun and just lethal as can be. Next up, I've got my crazy TTK setup. We've got the 7.62, the MTZ 7.62 battle rifle, and the Swarm. Close to mid-range, even long range, 7.62 is frying if you're able to land your shots, and then obviously the Swarm's close range efficiency is unmatched basically. So for the 7.62 here, this is going to be a really consistent, versatile setup to go back and forth between semi-auto or full auto as you see fit. 2.5 times scope on here initially. The 30 round mag is the max in this case, so you do have to work with what you have. That is a huge drawback, but it's not the end of the world considering the TTK here. Ripper underbarrel is especially useful if you're using this in semi-auto whatsoever. If you're going all in on full auto, you know, something like angled would probably be a better alternative there. Just depends on how you want to approach the gun. Spirit fire suppressor, obviously better control, range, and velocity, one of the best suppressors we have in the game. And then also the precision blackthorn barrel helps out with range and velocity as well. Clinch is really good too. It's going to give you some added control, but the range and velocity benefits are not as good. So just pick your poison there. Each of those barrels is really, really solid when it comes down to it. But yeah, this thing is an absolute beast. Its TTK is insane. And then close range, we got the Swarm for our running and gunning. We're flying and frying with this thing. The first damage range is the fastest TTK in the close range. I've got the Lacerda compensator on here instead of an optic for better control. And I've learned that with this setup, really the control is not all that bad if you just get used to how the irons behave. So this helps make the gun easier. The Reckless 90 long barrel gives me a ton of range and better velocity and a decent bit of control for not really detrimental ADS cons. 14% to your ADS speed's not a huge deal, and we obviously can get that back with stuff like the DR6 hand stop, helps out with general mobility and your ADS speed a little bit there. 50 round extended mag, the fast fire rate here makes this absolutely necessary. Then lastly, I go for the Fortress heavy stock, better control in general here for only a 2% ADS increase, not a huge deal whatsoever. That's a really beneficial attachment on there. So this makes the Swarm much easier to use, and it's still going to be very snappy and very aggressive as an SMG. Loadout 4 is admittedly one of my favorites right now. We've got the Pulemyot with the conversion kit, and then the ISO 9mm from MW2, one of the best close range SMGs in the game here. Initially for this, I'm going for the Shadow Strike suppressor. Again, just keeping me off the radar. Very simple, very straightforward. 7mm laser for the snappier ADS and sprint to fire. The 50 round extended mag, the fire rate here is pretty fast, so you definitely want that. Not a huge fan of the iron sights, unfortunately, here, so I go for the slate reflector. I just feel like I'm far more accurate using that. Then I go for the sheer rear grip, better ADS, and better sprint to fire on there. Yet again, this thing for close range fights is one of the best choices in the game. And then the Pulemyot, as we know, absolutely fries across all ranges. This feels like an LMG AR hybrid, but you have 100 rounds on here. So initially, I've got the Jack Annihilator bullpup kit that makes it go crazy with the overall stats here. The range is better, the velocity is a little bit worse, but we gain that back. The control is better, the mobility is better. This thing is so insanely fun. I do use the TLR-20 rear grip. This helps out a ton with control, only hurts your idle sway, which this gun doesn't have a ton of. That said, you could also use a stock for better control here as well. Like the Commando here is a really good choice too if you're just simply trying to go for that. 2.5 times Eagle Eye yet again, Spirit Fire suppressor yet again, and then because of the conversion kit, we gain access to the long barrel, which is for better range and better velocity outright, so it becomes even more lethal in the mid to long range. This setup, like I said, is so fun to use. It's extremely easy, and it fries. Another phenomenal LMG SMG hybrid setup here, or like sort of combo setup, is the Eradicator, which is very low recoil, very straightforward, and the WASP-9, another great option. The Wasp Swarm is obviously super close range based. The WASP-9 has a bit more versatility and range to it. It's also a little bit easier to use. Initially for this, because of that ease of use, I'm going for the Shadow Strike suppressor yet again. MS-9P hand stop. There's not much horizontal bounce here, and this is a super low recoil SMG, so that's not a huge deal. So a little bit of vertical control and some decent mobility benefits there. 7mm laser, snappier ADS and sprint to fire yet again. I go for the 40 round mag. The fire rate here is not crazy and these cons are not too harsh. You jump up to 50 and your ADS speed's a tad bit slower, the reload's a little bit slower, so I like going for the 40. It works just fine. And then I go for the classics factory stock. Helps out a ton with control and only a 4% decrease to ADS speed, so in terms of ease of use, this is a huge advantage there. The factory stock's not too bad either if you want some general mobility increases, however, but this thing as an SMG kind of slept on. It's really reliable and really easy. And then for the Eradicator, like I said, this is a very low recoil gun as well. Initially, spirit fire suppressor. I go for the choke angled grip here. Bruen heavy support is certainly applicable as well. Choke's going to give you a little bit of vertical control that's worse, but better horizontal and some better movement speed, which makes this feel again more like an AR LMG hybrid. I've got the 2.5 times optic on there, the core stock, which is just straight up better control all across the board, and that's really all it's focused on there. Then the combat rear grip for even better control. So this setup doesn't really move you. You land shots in that first fire rate where it's faster, those first 7 bullets or so, you're gonna melt. And then even outside of that, it's so simple, so straightforward that you're gonna fry through anyone, whether you're fighting at 30 meters or 90 meters. This thing's a beast. And then we've got another LMG SMG hybrid setup. We've got the Bruen and then the Striker 9mm, the Striker 9 basically here. So the Bruen is one of the most reliable guns in the game. Its TTK over range is so consistent, one of the best in the entire game as well, while also being low recoil, and especially with this setup on here being super aggressive and more like an assault rifle than an LMG. You could go back and forth between a reflector sight or a 2.5 times optic, doesn't really matter here. They're all going to be good, and again, it's all preference based. The 60 round mag is clutch here, just like an MW 2019, makes this way faster, way more aggressive, so that AR sort of feel out of it comes from this magazine attachment being a downgrade of the 100 round mag. Choke angled grip here yet again, and same deal with spirit fire suppressor. Then I go for the horizon barrel, which helps out with control and just velocity. No added range, but that's not a huge deal because the ranges are already so good on this thing that you don't necessarily have to have an increase for it to still outgun nearly every other weapon in the game. So this setup is super consistent and just insanely good at the same time. And then for the Striker 9, it's a pretty low recoil SMG. It's also pretty versatile. Its ranges extend out a little bit more, so you can actually have this in your hand, and if you get caught in an awkward situation where an enemy's a little bit further out, this can hold its own in some fights there. I don't love the irons, so I do go for the Elo sight. 40 round extended mag here. 50 is a tad bit too slow for my liking with the reload and whatnot, and even the ADS speed, so 40 is totally sufficient. Choke angled grip yet again, just because we can afford to have that vertical loss for better horizontal and for better movement here. That said, you could also go all in a mobility with something like a BW Edge or a DR6 hand stop if you wanted to there. Long barrel here extends the range and velocity a bit, so it makes it even more versatile. And then just the Shadow Strike suppressor once more, pretty straightforward there. Another slept on SMG in my opinion. This thing is really good. Now for Loadout 7, surprise surprise, it's another LMG and SMG hybrid. You can never guess what the most consistent guns are for range. This time we've got the DG56 LSW, or 58 LSW, sorry. The LMG here, low recoil and surprisingly good TTK over range. Initially here, I'm going for just the base Shadow Strike suppressor because this thing is so easy to use. I also got the Woody long barrel, which helps out with control, velocity, and range, that 3-in-1 combo. You love to see that. Choke angled grip here yet again, 2.5 times optic, and then I also go for the CQC butt plate here, which helps out a little bit with horizontal control, and then also better movement speed, which is a nice little 2-in-1. Hurts your vertical, not a huge deal with a gun like this because this thing absolutely beams. And then for the Rival 9, this thing is just super aggressive. It's relatively easy to use. The control is not too bad, but you just have insane mobility with this thing. Shadow Strike suppressor here yet again. The BW4 hand stop, so all in on mobility, ADS speed, sprint to fire, movement, ADS movement speed or strafe speed there, all getting benefits and all getting boosts with that. 40 round extended mag, again, 50 is just a tad bit too slow with that reload quickness. Not a huge fan of that. The Vice Assault rear grip helps out with basic control, and this only hurts your idle sway, which is not really relevant in SMG ranges. Then I go for the tactical stock here, helps out generally with mobility, hurts your control only a little bit, so that's not really a huge deal there. Really fun and super aggressive SMG build that is great for running and gunning. Now I do have another sniper loadout here because there is more than one fantastic sniper support option. Same exact KATT setup setup as we talked about earlier with the Bas-B, but instead of that, here I've got the Ram 7 more catered to a sniper support style of play. So initially here, instead of a 2.5 times optic, I've got a reflector sight, or the ELO sight, much more consistent for close to mid-range. Still running the 60 round drum because the fire rate here is pretty rough. It's fast, so if you're missing shots, you need that extra ammo. Heavy support under barrel for the better horizontal control, especially. There's a lot of horizontal bounce on this thing, and that's why I also stack the Komodo heavy compensator on here. I'd love to stay off the map, and with the suppressors, that's obviously the go-to there, but for added control, which I feel like you really need for this to be consistent, something like a Komodo heavy, which goes all in on horizontal control, is super clutch. Then I go for the Cormark heavy barrel, better control, velocity, and range. So even though this is kind of built out like you would build a long range rifle, it's aggressive enough that it works great for sniper support. Now, loadout number 9 actually features an MW2 rifle in the M13B, and I pair this with an MW2 SMG, so all MW2 here, which is some nice, variety for sure. The ISO 45, feeling great for close range as well, pretty similar to the ISO 9 in general. I do focus a little bit more on ease of use in this game than I did Warzone 2. Just again, not really a huge fan of the iron sights and how they behave with the screen shake and whatnot, so I go for a slate reflector just so I can be more accurate and it's easier to stay on target. 7mm laser, as always, on the SMGs. 45 round mag is the extended mag max here, so of course you're going to be running that. Sheer rear grip for the better ADS and sprint to fire, and then the cheetah stock sprint to fire. We got strafe speed, we got ADS speed, all in mobility there, feeling really consistent and really reliable. Again, it's unfortunate that we can't use a suppressor here to stay off the map, but if you want to be accurate and land more shots, I feel like you kind of got to go for this style of build here. And then of course for the M13B, even though it's an MW2 gun and there is a little bit more visual recoil, this is one of the easiest to use in the game, and it's also ridiculously competitive within the assault rifle category. Statistically, its TTK is up there with the best of the best. So I do got the 2.5 times Eagle Eye yet again. The 60 round extended mag here is the max. You definitely want that for the faster fire rate. Heavy support under barrel once more, spirit fire suppressor once more. Then I go for the echelon barrel. It's that 3-in-1 combo, better control, better velocity, better range, better pizza yet again. We don't see it as much on the MW3 gun, so it's nice when it pops up here. Yeah, but surprisingly good for an MW2 gun here. One of the best MW2 options in the game, if I'm being honest. And then lastly here, I've got the Holger 5.56 assault rifle and the Vaznev from MW2, which is surprisingly good for the close range, and actually has a decent sort of mid-range as well. As far as the setup goes here, I'm going for mobility, but also ease of use. So the cast one barrel actually extends that damage range a little bit. It makes it even more efficient in like the mid-range, and even that first damage range goes out a little bit more, which is always nice to see. Olay laser for a snappier ADS, and sprint to fire, same deal as the 7mm. 45 round extended mag, the True Tac rear grip, which helps out with ADS and sprint to fire, then the Atrazat stock, which is sprint speed and strafe speed. That said, if you really wanted a suppressor, you could probably drop the True Tac rear grip and throw on, a Shadow Strike if you really wanted to. That's totally dependent on how you value control versus staying off the mini map and whatnot. Then for the Holger, this is one of the easiest guns to use in the entire game, and also has one of the better rifle TTKs. So 2.5 times optic. The 40 round extended mag here is a downside because this is the largest magazine, so its damage per mag is not great, but you work with what you have. Obviously, we've got the angled under barrel on here yet again. We got the Cryo 6 match barrel, which is better velocity, control, and range, to that 3-in-1 yet again, and then also the spirit fire suppressor once more. So overall, you really can't go wrong with any of these guns. You can also mix and match a lot of these primaries and secondaries, maybe sub the sniper support builds, mix and match these ARs and these LMGs with the various different SMGs. You're going to have a lot of really good setups here. There's a lot of very viable options in the current meta. And that said, that's going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, if you found it helpful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It would be really appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee that every single day you are up to date with all things going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.